What is wrong with me, Karan? I hate imperfection, and then perfection scares me. On one hand, I feel like no one in the universe understands me, and on the other hand, if I let anyone in close, I feel like they will find out the huge disappointment that I am and eventually leave. Everyone leaves. I feel like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Like I am in a clear darkness. Like there is something so deeply broken within me that it can never be fixed. What do I do? Where do I go, Karan? What do I do, Karan?
It's simple, man. You just go to Goa and meet Shah Rukh Khan. Fixes everything.
Yes, so today we are going to discuss Kaira from Dear Zindagi, played by Alia Bhatt and written and directed by Gauri Shinde. So, before we get into that, I just wanted to talk about why we picked this character in context to our first character. Like in first character, we talked about Vikram Jaisingh, played by Farhan Akhtar from Lag By Chance, right? So that was a character which was kind of buying into the ideas of the world, right? Like his sense of success, his sense of ambition in life came from the ideas that the world had fed on him, like of becoming a movie star. In Kaira's case, it is almost a reciprocal of that, right? It is dealing with the idea of there being something wrong within you, like feeling broken from within, right? And so she has to kind of work on her own issues because before she can meet the world and like kind of find her sense of being and stuff like that. So it just became a very sort of a inversely proportional character to that,
Yeah.
and it made for a very interesting discussion.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about that. But yes, Karan, tell us, what was your first impression of Kaira?
I think the first feeling, the thing with Dear Zindagi as a film itself, what I love is about this character is that it makes for such a good rewatchable character. Like the first time you watch it, right, you're almost confused as to why this person is lashing out so much. And I think every time you watch it, because you know the information, you know the full film, every time you come back to it, you're like, oh, interesting. I never noticed that before, right? I also think there's a case for flawed women in film. I like the fact that there is a woman in this film who's the protagonist. And this is important, right? Mostly protagonists, right? Women protagonists are written on a pedestal. They're either like perfect, can do no wrong, people who don't feel fully formed or real. What I love about Kaira is that she is flawed, that she is deeply, deeply flawed, and she is going through it and she's called out for it and she has to confront it and face it. So I really like that being a character that we're covering.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This reminds me of this movie Frances Ha, which is written and directed by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach.
Mm-hmm.
And incidentally, that also covers the idea of a flawed protagonist and her life and all of that. But in that, there is this one line which Frances keeps saying, that she likes things which look like mistakes, right? And in Kaira's case, also we see that so immediately. Like the moment she enters in her house, flat number 304, in some building, some society in Mumbai, she is like kind of turning things upside down, like things which her maid has kept in the right places. She's shifting them. She's turning the K upside down, the truck somewhere else. So she also likes things that look like mistakes. Is the first impression that we kind of get of her, and also that her apartment is a little bit messy and all over the place.
Yeah.
Which you kind of once when we were talking about Ted Lasso, and you pointed this out that that Ted's house, like as he's this particular actor who's kind of being larger than life and being who's solving everyone's problems, we see that his house is kind of in a mess as well. So you pointed that out for me once, right?
Yeah, I think like her house is a mess, and Ted Lasso's case also, like his house was a mess, and it's
Yeah.
probably because of the internal turmoil, right?
Yeah.
That's what it represents. And I think the thing with Kaira is she is not addressing any of that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
And she's lashing out and she's acting just sort of in a way that seems very random. And you're almost like, why would you do that? Why would you hurt that person? Why would you say that? Why would you yell at a couple in a joggers park for no reason?
Yeah.
And that's because that is the indication of her not addressing what's going on with her.
Yeah.
Right? She's not holding herself accountable at the start of
Yeah.
this film.
Yeah, and like that brings me to your first point, which you're talking about how this movie becomes better on multiple rewatches because we learn all the places that she's coming from,
Hmm.
why she's giving such a strong, emotional, extreme, aggressive reaction, right?
Yeah.
And then as we move into the movie, we understand, oh, this is the reasons, these are her issues. But for
Hmm.
her also, it makes for that case, right? Like that jogging moment, like
Hmm.
she's come to jog the next day itself is after her breakup with Raghavendra, right? Like we have
Hmm.
all been there, like a day after a breakup, the first thing that you do is sort your house out or like go for a run
Hmm.
and feel that Fleabag season 2 begins with that, like when she's eating right, like she's going on jogging, she's working out, and she's feeling like if she sorts herself out from from the exterior
Hmm.
scenarios, like, oh, then her internal issues will also recover.
Then
So yeah,
everything will
that's
be
a
fine.
beautiful moment in the film, like that.
Yeah, I think like, but that's the thing is that with Kyra, she hasn't. So one, she hasn't dealt with any of this.
Hmm.
Two, she has a career that she's sort of like, she's just dove into this.
Yeah.
She is like working really hard. She's got a chip on her shoulder. She's upset.
Yeah.
She's not happy with the work she's doing also.
Yeah.
Right? She is working in the field that she wants, but she's not happy
Yeah.
with the work that she's doing.
Yeah.
And she's constantly questioning it.
Yeah.
Right?
Because professionally, like, she's trying to make a name for herself. She's in that particular world, she's a person who's like starting out and trying to make a space for herself. But with the thing with Kyra is that all her sense of self-worth, she has attached it to that, to her
Yeah.
career. And because she's neglecting all these other parts about herself, like which personally or individually are a part of her story, because she's not addressing that, she feels, oh, if she gets it this right, if she only gets to make her film, or like if she gets to be the complete, like instead of shooting parts of the film, she gets to the entire film by herself, then she's attaching a lot of her sense of self-worth to that.
So I had a question coming off of that. Because I'm wondering, is Kyra someone that is ambitious, or is the ambition just a product of hiding from herself? Like, is the career is everything and I need to do work and I'm trying to get the next gig and the next gig.
Yeah.
Is that an actual thing that she wants to do, or is it just coming from, oh, I'm sad
Yeah.
and I'm not dealing with it?
Yeah. I think it's a part of life for all of us, right? There is one part of our life which is relationships and the issues and like the things that we have, which is there. But then work is also a significant part of our life from which we derive our sense of meaning. So for her, it is a part of her life which is very significant.
Yeah.
But then, whether she's ambitious or not, yes, in this particular world, like, then it is more than the character. It is also about the systems that they are living in and how the society that we live in and all of that, it makes us where, it like professionally, the sense of self-worth is very high. Like, it is attached to our profession. So she's also a byproduct of that system where, like, yes, her ambition is kind of derived from that. And it's rightfully so, like,
Yeah.
In her
I think
case.
I think the key, actually, as you were talking about that, I just remembered, like, she's working on a short film, right?
Yeah.
Like, the whole joke is that her friends also make, is
Yeah.
that short film is like the longest project in history, right?
Yeah.
I think that
Attack.
maybe she is not, she is, I don't think, so maybe she's not ambitious,
Yeah.
but I think if she was left to her devices, had everything sorted out, she would still want to make that short film, as we see
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah.
So I think that her passion is to make a film,
Yeah.
but this sort of drive to get the next project and the next project, that is the avoidance.
Yes.
The short film is the thing at its core that she wants to do.
That is truly hers. Like every
Yeah.
creative person who has always tried to dive into an independent project of their own or start something of their own
Correct.
must have felt attacked by that particular line.
Yeah.
Oh, your short film, it is the longest project in the history of like the world and all of that. So the other thing which I wanted to talk about Kaira's character is the like she's a independent girl in this big city living by herself. So the solidarity that she shares with her maid, played by the wonderful Akansha Gade in this film, like in our friendships, I found that quite a bit. Like, when, sort of women live by themselves in like big cities like Mumbai, like the solidarity that they share with the maid is quite a beautiful thing in that context, right? Because if you look at it from the maid's perspective, like this woman, like Kaira, for her, almost becomes this idea of a liberated woman, right? Like who's pretty much living the life according to her, which probably her social circumstance doesn't allow her to.
Correct.
So in that way, she's kind of becoming this beautiful, sort of inherent representation that she's living through Kaira also a little bit. For Kaira also, all her messy parts, like, all her, like after she is coming from a breakup, or like the varied life that she's living, all the disappointments she gets, to share it across with Akansha. And like you pointed
Yeah.
out, she almost always has an opinion on that as
She
well, right?
does. And what I liked about the Alka character
Yeah.
is that she is, while she doesn't have the education that Kaira does,
Yeah.
right? And she comes from a completely different background. She's not exposed to a lot of these things until she met Kaira.
Yeah.
I like that she has a lot of insight into these things anyway, just inherently.
Hmm.
Like her take and her opinion on something.
Yeah.
And also she's very intuitive.
Yeah.
So I really like that as a dynamic, as almost she's like this grounding. When Kaira lists out the 5 people in her life, Alka's on that list. Because Alka is that sounding board. She's the first sounding board, actually. Because every night when she comes home, like the first person that she speaks to is Alka.
Yes.
And Alka has a nuanced opinion on it.
Yes.
You know, even her takes on like, Acha, you're taking down that picture
Yeah.
of that boy. So she's understood that a breakup's happened. She knows all these things. So I
Yeah.
like that dynamic a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Like as Kaira is struggling with the primary caregiver relationships in her life, like Akansha, like the maid, almost becomes Alka, becomes the sort of the primary caregiver for her, and so their equation and relationship in the context of this film is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But yeah, man, you also talked about the 5 important
Yeah.
relationships that comes from Shah Rukh Khan, her therapist, right? Who asks her, like in our entire life, from the various connections that we make, it is said that we are also a byproduct of the 5 closest relationships that we have. Like we share across their values, their ideas, their belief systems, and that kind of impacts us and our stories as well.
Yeah.
In the case of Kaira, she talks about the 5 characters, the 4 of which are constants, and then there is this one which is always changing.
Yeah.
Right. So what did you
4
think of that?
Yeah, so the 4 are Fatima, Fatty, Jackie, Kiddo,
Yeah.
who's her younger brother,
Yeah.
and Alka. Right?
Yeah.
So those are the 4.
Yeah.
But I think like those 4, even though, because she said those 4, right? So
Yeah.
this is what threw me off. She said the 4, and I was like, this means that Kaira is a great friend to them. Right? Because she will always look out for them. She's fiercely loyal, which
Yeah.
she is.
Yeah.
So all these things are true. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's too reductive to talk about something like in terms of good or bad. Maybe it's too straightforward to just say, is Kaira a good friend or is she a bad friend? But I'm often wondering, like, is she a friend that they
Yeah.
can rely on all the time? Because she seeks that.
Yeah.
We know this from her friendship. She says that she feels safe. But is she someone that they can come to
Yeah.
when they're going through stuff?
Yeah. The idea of connection is a little bit flawed for Kaira because she has not sorted herself out fully. Like that is why she is not able to meet her closest friends also fully.
Correct.
Yeah, she hangs out with them, she has good times with them, she shares across her issues with them as well, like her idea of her disappointment of going to home and why it is sort of bothering her and all of that. She does share that with them, but like the idea of sharing true connection with them, like meaningful connections with them, is her story also. She learns through the film, right?
Yeah.
Like it is not just that she has to be there for Jackie also, like played by Yashaswini Dayama, right? So she has to be there for her. She has to like kind of be receptive to her stories as well, and which is her story that she learns through the film. But yeah, let's talk about like the 5th changing person in her life, right? The
Yeah.
romantic issues. Let's talk about, I think there is a strong case and we get to learn a lot about Kaira through the men in her life. So let's also talk about the men in the sequence that they appear in the movie, in the story, right? We start off straight off the bat with this character that she's already in a relationship with, Sid, played by Angad Bedi in the movie. Like we learn as the movie begins that she is in a relationship with this boring Bawarchi.
Yeah, they
which-
make him seem so
Yeah.
dull right from the
Yeah.
get-go. They're like, this guy, he's nice.
Yeah.
I think that's like, that's like everyone's nightmare. If someone describes you as, that guy, he's nice.
Yes.
That's one thing you don't want to hear about
Yeah.
yourself. And I think that's how you describe Sid.
Yes. Yes. And the first time we see him in the movie is the time when Kaira is going to break up with him, because she's going to tell him that she has cheated on him with like Raghavendra, like another like cheating thing that we are going to talk about in our
Yeah,
podcast.
that's the theme. In Their Shoes.
Yeah.
Cheating sponsored by In Their Shoes. This
Yes.
is-
Absolutely. So
we don't support cheating at all. I just want to put that out there.
we support women's rights and women's wrongs, Karan.
Especially the wrongs.
Yeah, especially the wrongs.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when I was watching it this time, what I felt about the Sid character was that the problem with like why they broke up also, and like why what happened with there was like he was not real with her. Like Sid's character, almost like the Suresh character, which she meets later on, like this match which her family is trying to ask her to get married to and all of that. Like he's, I think, Sid dial 10, but in Sid's character, like he's almost so plastic. He's not real for her. Like even when he's complimenting her and like you are looking gorgeous, babe, or whatever he's starting off, it's not coming from a place of like authenticity. It's not coming from a place of that he really means it. Like that is why in this film you see they meet at his restaurant, which is like a posh 5-star or like a high-end restaurant. Like immediately after breaking up, where is Kaira going? Like she's going to the Taj Chinese roadside food stall. She's going for something very real. From this world of plastic or like show off and all that.
Yeah.
She's immediately going to have Chinese at a place. Like I felt that quite telling in the context of how Sid and her were just not real with each other.
I just realized, like, because of the words thing that you said,
Yeah.
where what he's saying doesn't feel real or authentic.
Yeah.
And we know this.
Yeah.
Like, and we'll get into this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the idea of someone telling Kaira something that they don't mean is a big trigger for her.
Yeah.
Like when that authenticity, like if someone promised something or said something, and you can sense that they don't mean it, that'll drive Kaira away. We know this because of her childhood and all those things.
Yep.
So that is a big factor of like her going, okay, you know what, Sid it's not working.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and ultimately it is about that, right? Like when in intimate relationships, your issues will come up. But there is a beautiful, I think it's Annie Hall, Woody Allen movie, where he's walking on the street after a breakup and he just finds a couple and he says, "Oh, you look like a beautiful couple, like wonderful couple. How do you make it together?" And they talk about like how they never discuss the issues with each other. And that is why, like he says, "I am just this ignorant man." And she's like, "I am bought into this ideas of society." And that is why we have kind of made it through. Yeah. So there is a lot of that between Sid and her. But incidentally, it is in the second relationship, like with Raghavendra, which kind of really shines through. I really like Jackie when she says like Raghavendra was very good for her. Like I really believe in that.
I don't. Okay. This is where I think we're going to disagree. I think Raghavendra, I'm just going to say all the men were bad, blanketly, and not hold Kaira accountable at all. Yeah. No, but actually, like I think the thing with Raghavendra, I think that what turns Kaira off about him is that he is planning stuff and projecting onto her immediately. So he's like, I think we should get serious. I'm thinking about this, that we should do this. He's put her on this pedestal. He constantly tells her that she has the job because she's attractive. I know he's joking. Look, and he always clarifies, but he will always answer the first time she'll ask him, where he knows that's a big deal for her.
Yeah.
Like he knows that her being good enough for the job is a big deal for her, but he will always open with "tum bahut hot ho yaar isliye." Yeah. Which I didn't appreciate, which I think is very like, because you're putting that, you're diluting that work as well. Yeah. So that's why I feel like Raghavendra wasn't right, because he's constantly like poking and it's his own stuff that he's putting onto her.
So in that sense, like nobody is right? Raghavendra is a flawed character. But what I felt in the context of their connection was that they could have made space for each other. Because you can see that Raghavendra is really trying, right? He's telling her that we should be getting serious. He's trying to be patient with her. Like what happens in the context of the Raghavendra story is, I think, the first time the thematic point of her abandonment issues kind of set in.
Yeah.
Right? The first, like when in the bar, Raghavendra takes her to the side and says that, you know what, like I have to go tonight. And, like on this particular film, which is going to be your break also, I am going to, kind of associate with my ex who's going to work on this project.
Correct.
That is the first time in the movie the abandonment issues hit.
She shuts down immediately.
Yes.
Like if you notice that scene, right, as he mentions the ex who's going to be there, it's almost like the sound starts to go away. Like she can't hear him. It doesn't matter who's there. And the club is a perfect setting for that.
Yes.
Because she can just drown out all the pain, and she goes and dances with that guy also, who Raghavendra clearly doesn't like because he approached her, right?
And he's clearly showing it to him.
Yeah.
Like she's aware that he's watching it as she's dancing with the boys.
Yeah, that's that self-destructive kind of, I'm just going to step away from this because I feel an abandonment is coming.
Yes.
On the horizon, there is someone that is going to reject me in the future because there's a third person now involved who he has history with.
Yes.
So instead of like actually dealing with it, she's just like, you know what, screw it. I'm gonna reject him before he rejects me.
Yes.
And not directly, by the way.
Yep.
Like very passive aggressive, like I'm gonna walk away, dance, pretend he's not even there.
Yep. that particular moment, right, when she's drowning herself in the noise of the club, it made me think of this similar trope in this. So there is another movie which is on Mubi right now, which is Return to Seoul, which is also directly talking about abandonment issues, incidentally. So in that, what the filmmaker does is that trace the relationship of the character with the music in her life. So just like Kaira at the beginning of the movie, she's kind of drowning herself into the sound, like which is the like this particular club, which is almost like, it doesn't even matter to her what music is playing. It is as long as it makes her not think her thoughts through,
Yeah.
like not sit with the emotion and like kind of really go through with it. So it really made me think about that. And the other thing with like that particular point, right, because I find that is where it is really beautiful in the context of the theme of this film, in the terms of the abandonment issues. So where are her issues coming from is like when she was like young, like when she was a kid, her parents left her because they wanted to make something in their business, right?
Yeah.
Like make a life out in their business. And that is why they left her to her grandparents, right? So they left her for a greater cause. So in her story, she's almost like, oh, I am not good enough as the greater cause.
Yeah.
Like I am always coming second in the line. So when Raghavendra is kind of moving that,
She's like, okay, jao.
yeah.
Puro.
So she's
Yeah.
also at that point of time, she's like, Raghavendra is choosing the greater cause
Yeah.
for her. And all of her abandonment issues in that moment are kicking in. And then she's making the worst choices for herself going on from there.
And that's also like an indication of what we talked about earlier, which is my question was, do you think she's ambitious or career driven? Because why Raghavendra is going
Yeah.
is to talk to the financiers about
Yeah.
the project that they're working on together,
Yeah.
which is a big deal for her,
Yeah.
which she wants, right?
Yep.
At least that's what we're told. But as soon as he's like, I have to go there because of the funding, even then, even before he's mentioned the ex, if you notice, she's like, okay, go, jao. She, even though that is a project that she wants to do,
Yeah.
the abandonment is stronger than that. That feeling of
Yeah.
abandonment is stronger.
Yes. And I also just want to go back a little bit and want to talk about this very Shah Rukh Khan moment that happens with Raghavendra as they are boarding the flight, right? The first time that they are traveling like together in the film that we find out,
Huh.
like we see that he is going to drive like in the
He's going to be in business class. Yeah.
He's going to like come in business class and she has economic class ticket, right? So as they are getting inside the plane, we see there is a moment when he is looking at her, right? And there is another guy beside her who's seated. So like when I watched it, I was like, if this were a Shah Rukh Khan moment,
Yeah.
what Shah Rukh Khan would have done is convinced the other guy and given him the business class ticket and taken the economic class for himself.
This is
But
what I
this
mean.
is where Raghavendra disappoints, truly. Yeah.
This is why maybe those expectations of like what he should have done is what disappoints me about
Yes.
Raghavendra. Also, the thing you said about space
Yeah.
with him and Kaira,
Yeah.
I feel like he doesn't let her just be. Often, like I've spoken to friends about dating and
Yeah.
the process of getting to know someone. Sometimes people feel like they're being evaluated as partners immediately, and I feel like Raghavendra does that very quickly.
Yes.
Like Raghavendra, they just slept together on the shoot.
Yeah.
So it's a very nascent stage of the relationship. He's already like, hey, I think we should be serious. He's already evaluating her with that perspective. And we know he's looking for something serious because he gets engaged pretty quickly after that. So he doesn't let Kaira just be, which I think is also the thing that's kind of making her feel weird.
Yeah.
He's immediately like, what are we doing? Are we taking this? There's no space to just date and enjoy each other's company.
That is a beautiful point. We
Yeah.
will come back to that. But let's talk about the third, which you'll absolutely love, right? The third
Oh
character.
God. Speaking
Rumi.
of drowning in music,
Yeah, go for it.
Rumi really bothered me just in terms of a viewing experience.
Rumi played by Ali Zafar
Ali
in the
Zafar.
movie. Yeah. Yeah.
So Rumi just annoys me because he talks about everything in like music metaphors.
Yeah.
Like he is unable to escape that at all. Like when they meet, obviously he's performing at this club, right? And that's how they interact for the first time. But the man does not get out of music zone only. It's like, I don't know what movie that was. There was a Fardeen Khan movie where the dad he was like an army officer. So all his analogies were like,
Magan.
yeah, all his metaphors were army metaphors. In this case, like all his metaphors are just music. He's like, well, there's more to music than just movies. There's jazz, there's blues, and he's not talking about that. He's talking about something else.
Yeah.
It's an analogy. So that one is a clear, like there's no conflict for me personally. I don't know about you.
Yeah. The occupational hazard of dating a musician, right? But yeah, like the first time they meet, he tells her, do you listen to blues? In a very seductive tone, as Ali Zafar does in this movie. But she's like, tum mujhe zyada red lagte ho. Like, you seem like a collection of red flags. And I was like, man, when you have issues going on in your life, when you are dealing with romantic issues and troubles and bothers, there's something so attractive and seductive about red flags, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, let me get all the red flags. Like, I want to just go on this ride and see where it can lead me. And like, that is a journey which, in the context of Kaira, like, she's going, like, she notices that and she goes for it. But because she's going through therapy also at that point of time, she immediately comes to the terms of, oh no, this is not working for me, and
Yeah.
she breaks it off.
She tries it. So again, keeping my personal
Yeah.
disdain for Rumi's character, like the Rumi
Yeah.
character, when he does, like the idea of when he does speak to her
Yeah.
and ask her questions, when the guitar's put away,
Hmm.
and there's no more singing,
Yeah.
she does kind of not. He asks her questions about her life, like this long question that he had, and she's again repulsed by it,
Yeah.
which I'm a little confused by. I'm not fully sure because she didn't want the music, but when the question arrived, she was a bit like, "Oh no, not this,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I see that as a moment of like, yes, he asked the right question, but she suddenly came to the realization, oh, I don't want to hang out with this guy. Like, that was the thing. Like, okay, I want to, like, I don't want to choose to tell my story to this person. And that's why she broke up immediately with him.
Correct.
Like, that was, I think, that was my reading of that particular moment.
Also, there's one big problem with all these three men. They're not Shah Rukh Khan.
We will. So yeah. So what happens? Like, that is the larger point, which I feel not the Shah Rukh Khan one,
Yeah.
but what she shares with Shah Rukh. Like, why she says that the fifth person keeps changing always is because she doesn't feel safe with them.
Yeah.
Like, that I feel is such a significant line in context of modern dating. Like the idea of a safe space,
Yeah.
right? Like, because we are traversing the like different dating apps and like dating in our world of today, what has happened is there is, like, if you especially look at it from the context of women, right, the amount of, like, their proportion of the amount of harassment that they go through versus the genuinely nice, kind and assertive men that they meet is very skewed.
Correct.
Right, that is why the moment they come up to the first connection, first match that they make, the presumption or the weight of this harassment is too much upon them. Like, imagine 100 people that you're matching with, 90% of them are like kind of just being assholes to you.
Yeah.
Like, you will be coming to that place with a certain kind of energy, right?
Yeah.
That is why I feel, in the context of modern dating, the first thing that both partners to strive for, which you point out in Raghuvendra's case also, he doesn't allow, like, or that the first thing that modern partners should do is to strive for safe space. Like Raghavendra, he was going for the idea of dating, right? Oh,
Yeah.
let me just do that. Instead, if, like, probably if they would have just gone for, okay, let's just figure out a space for both of us to be, and
Yeah.
then see where it goes, then I think it would have gone somewhere.
That's why I like the hot priest in Fleabag.
Yeah.
That's the most hilarious thing about the hot priest is the main thing that he does is he just listens to her.
Yeah.
Like, he listens.
Yeah.
And already the bar is that low
Yeah.
that she's like, oh my God, here's a man who listens, who pays attention to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's why he's the first person to notice her breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Which is also what kind of the Shah Rukh dynamic is, that he gives her space and he listens.
Yes.
It's a low bar, but
it's
it
a
exists.
low bar, yeah. But like, so there is another thing which I wanted to talk about was, there is this a huge shout out to this account called as Indian Sex Therapist, run by Neha Bhatt. She has put up a masterclass online on sexual trauma, and in the chapter 1 of the masterclass, she talks about this idea of a safe space, but also along with it the idea of a brave space. Right, in order to arrive at a safe space, we have to take a courage of putting our parts out there and appeal to the idea of making a brave space for ourselves also to be, which in the case, again, like, it's the most beautiful example to talk about Fleabag and Hot Priest.
Yeah.
The couple to kind of look up to. I think, I don't know if they, like, we will deep dive into what their issues were, but yeah, in terms of Kaira's story, the idea of safe space becomes very important, and it tells us a lot about modern dating and relationships and connections that we make in our world.
So if we have to talk about her abandonment issues, and we've discussed at length her relationships, I think to understand all of it, you have to go back to her family. Because that's where it all really stems from. A lot of the decisions that she makes in her relationships kind of stem back to when she was 5 years old or 6 years old. And that duration in her time, right? Where everything changed. Where she became a different person.
Yeah.
And her relationship with her parents is kind of the main sticking point, I feel.
Yeah.
And it is the core of this film.
Yeah. There is the thing, her being the elder sibling, which I relate to the most, that she calls her going back to her house as a duty. Like her work, her profession is what she enjoys and thrives at. But the moment she has to, go home and live with her parents, like she is looking at that as almost a burden or as almost a task which she has to prepare for, because she has to meet her parents, she has to meet her extended relatives also, and they will pose her questions about her marriage, about her career, and trying to understand that and almost look at it from a very judgmental perspective. And that's why it's a very relatable part of being an elder sibling
Yeah.
in Indian households. Which,
But the duty thing is so true
yeah,
because the biggest task that Shah Rukh gives her is to just speak to her parents for 10 minutes.
yeah,
Which on the surface of it would seem so trivial.
yeah,
Like, oh, speak to them for 10 minutes is no big deal.
yeah,
But then as you watch her talk to them, you realize how hard it is for her. How much pain there is, how she's unable to kind of have that, especially with her mom, who she only speaks to for like 10 seconds, where the mom says she's, dealing with the brother coming back. So immediately she cuts the call. There's also this thing with the mom, which I felt like, I don't know what the significance of this is, and I have a theory, but like the Kaira's main problem with her mom, or the thing that always makes her really upset, is when the mom asks her about food. For some reason, as soon as she's like, kya khaoge? What do I make? She really it brings out so much rage in her. And my theory is because she never asked that question about the younger brother, Kiddo. She knows exactly what to make when Kiddo's returning. But with Kaira, she's always asking. She doesn't know.
yeah. Food is such a part of love language in this film as well, right? Like you see the mom asking her that questions, also her maid giving her exactly what she is looking for, like what she needs at that particular point. And also your 10-minute thing, like the homework to talk 10 minutes with your parents, reminded me of this iconic Ranveer Singh line from Dil Dhadakne Do. Like, ये family में सब ऊपर ऊपर सी बात करते हैं, असली बात तो कोई करता ही नहीं है. This whole idea of having real conversations within the families and sitting down and talking about your issues and all of that. Like it's
That
such a
doesn't
rare.
happen. And I think, that's what Shah Rukh, when
Yeah.
Shah Rukh addresses it, right? He's like, when you're a kid and you're growing up, right? You're not having real conversations that could raise conflict. There could be a problem. You could express anger or resentment or anything in a safe space, but she couldn't do that with her parents.
Yeah.
So that has kind of stunted her way of expressing things in other situations, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that she couldn't do that with her parents informs everything.
Yeah.
So she's unable to say, so that's why it's upar upar ki baat.
Yeah.
Like the Ranveer quote. That's why it's not anything substantial. That's why it is, oh, what are you doing? Oh, tumhara shoot acha tha kya? Like it's very surface level conversations that she is able to have with her friends. She's able to talk about real meaningful things with her friends, but not with her parents.
Yeah, and the idea of safe space is almost absent in her house, right? Like, she's not making any efforts from her end as well, but you can see that immediately there is this burden of being judged. Like, the important question of, Kaira, are you a Lebanese? Like it's kind of like they're asking her about like, oh, why she's not getting married after 25 because maybe her sexual orientation is different and all of that. So
Yeah.
they are like, and they are also not asking that question from a point of curiosity or like point of trying to understand her, but a place of judging her always, and that she's feeling heavily, and that is why she's behaving like her energy is so different when she's with her friends versus how she's at her house. So that
And
I
we all
feel-
experience that, right?
Yeah.
Like we've all been different people in front of our relatives or
Yeah.
our family, and we're different with our friends. We're able to feel freer
yeah,
because we don't feel as judged.
Yeah.
It all comes down to that. Like it comes down to that Raghavendra point also,
Yeah.
which is that there's no evaluation happening in the moment. There's no commentary on who you are. Oh, your career's not going anywhere. Oh, why aren't you married? There aren't these questions because your friends know you and you've opened up to them. You've been vulnerable with them. Those two people, especially, who are her relatives, they are like all of society put into one, like two people. Like all of it is, especially the man. He is so like, he says the most, like the funniest bit was when, she goes on this tirade about how she failed the second standard and that's why her parents came back. That was the whole reason they came back. And it's a very big, like a pivotal moment in the movie. And his takeaway is, but when they came back, she didn't fail after that, no?
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. That's the core of it.
yeah. it's such a flaw. Like there is a line where Kiddo says, that failures are of various types. Some failures are right in front of me, like that iconic line. But the point which I was thinking about in that case, it's such a flaw in equations that we share in especially Indian or Asian societies. Like which I feel, if I look at it from the perspective of the parents, what happens is like they share a lot of our failures while they
Yeah.
let you have your success. So
Correct.
they feel like almost the ownership with the failure, right? So that is the part, like it's a flaw within the system, and that is why like parents are behaving in such a way where when it is coming to the failures of Kaira, they are almost trying to take charge and control of it. And whereas like Kaira just wants to like kind of just be in her spaces and
Because
like
sometimes you can't say like when you fail.
yeah,
I think this is one of the problems in like a lot of families in India
yeah,
and society like that, where if you are going through a tough moment, you can't just say, "Hey, I'm going through a tough moment right now,"
yeah,
or "Hey, I got fired. I'm going through a breakup. I am struggling emotionally. I'm depressed." These are not things you're allowed to say.
yeah,
You are, and that makes it. It's almost like they're trying to cover it up.
yeah,
They're like, "Oh, just don't tell them. We'll come up with a narrative for it."
yeah,
What you're basically saying, right? Like they have to come up with the perfect narrative for it so that it doesn't seem bad to the outside. To the outside people who will think about it for like 2 seconds.
yeah.
I always think this. Like I'm like, log kya kahenge? Like those people are also dedicating. How much time are they dedicating into it that we're catering so much of our lives to them?
Yeah, it is a very sad thing. The idea of shame, or the way shame kind of looms over all of our families, or in fact in the construction of our societies. The reason why we are not like struggling to be our fuller selves, or like kind of meet each other truly and sort of significantly, is because this idea of shame is percolating onto our relationships, into the ideas of intimacy, into all of our equations. In fact, so it's like it's not just in context to the characters of this film, but it is a larger social systemic issue as well, right? It almost makes me think of this poem which I came across, which I had read before, but in Ted Lasso also I came across, like, which is by Philip Larkin. This poem called as "This Be the Verse." I'll just say it out, like read it out for all of you, and then we can
Absolutely.
talk about it. So this poem is called as "This Be the Verse." It is by the poet Philip Larkin, and it goes something like this: They fuck you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you up with the faults that they had and add some extra just for you. But they were fucked up in their own turn by fools with old hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern and half the time at each other's throats. Man hands misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can. And don't have any kids yourself. So, man, like I feel like a lot
That
of
was
times
beautiful.
this poem is kind of like like it is the simplistic takeaway from this poem is that he is kind of taking a anti-natalistic stance where he's telling you not to have kids, or that life is full of suffering and all of that. But I always look at this in the context of our societies and our lives and all of that, and I feel what this poem goes on to say is that oh, this is going to happen. Like man will hand misery to man, hurt people will hurt people, and who knows where our hurts have started. Like who's kind of started it first and how it has kind of passed on from each other. But if we really become aware of it, and if we do the work which happens in Kaira's context, then you can address it. Then as we saw it in Ted Lasso also, there is this idea presented, and which Shahrukh also tells Jahangir Khan in this movie tells Kaira, that you can take a step back and stop looking at your parents as your parents, like from the weight of that, and look at them as humans, right? And that becomes such a powerful thing, because then you see them also struggling with their own issues and kind of trying to bring their imperfections to the table and like kind of deal with it, which is Kaira's story as well, right? So in the context of the story, like it becomes quite a bit of part of that. And
Yeah.
in Ted Lasso, they talk about this idea of this beautiful idea of saying fuck you and thank you to your parents. Like he meets his mom, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing he says, "Mom, thank you for doing these things to me, but also fuck you for like handing over this flaw."
Yeah.
Right? It's not said in an accusatory manner, like this is the fault, right? Like I think this is a clash of our generations happening right now, when we share these ideas with our parents and like say, oh, because so much of our generation is going to therapy and tracing back our faults and coming up with these ideas and all of that, it almost feels that like as an accusation towards parents, like as almost a blame passed on to them. but it is not a blame. It is kind of us becoming aware of, oh, these are our miseries, these are our flaws, which are we are handing out to each other.
Yeah.
And if we become aware about them and have a conversation about them, then there is hope for moving on to the next step, whatever that is.
There's no resentment also,
Yeah.
right? If you've addressed it. That's the thing that Shah Rukh is saying. That's the whole
Yeah.
point of, if you talk about it, if you say that, hey, I'm hurt by what you did,
Yeah.
and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I think there's a resolution and there's not baggage, and it
Yeah.
doesn't hover over, because let's be clear, right? Like, Kaira is living in the past. This thing is hanging over her head the whole time.
Yeah.
What happened with her parents? And who knows if she had addressed that with her parents, or if her parents weren't so quick to be like, okay, like her parents went to a different place and that was a difficult moment for them. They were in a different country. They went to multiple countries and they couldn't be there with her daughter. That was a difficult moment for them too. But because they didn't want to deal with it or process those emotions, they were like, okay, yeah, you stay at your nana nani's house and you'll be fine, and don't talk about it and don't send us letters, and I don't want to give you false hope and I don't want to deal with this at all. Let me just not process any of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is, if they had just been like, hey, we're really sorry, this sucks. If she had addressed it like, I want to be back with you, if the mom had said those things, but I can't right now, maybe Kaira wouldn't feel like people lie to you.
Yeah,
and all those things.
That would have forged a very healthy thing for her in her childhood, which is another point which Shah Rukh Khan talks about to her when he takes her to the beach, right? And he's telling her, like, as he's, there is this beautiful game of kabaddi that he's talking about. He's talking about how his dad used to, kind of bring him to this beach, and they used to do this thing. And the idea of parents kind of leaving beautiful memories for their kids to kind of sort of narrate one day and kind of come from a happy space also when they are looking back at their memories, because the past is never the past. In fact, it is never dead, is one of the lines which is spoken in the film.
In fact, it's not even the past.
It's, in fact, like, the past is never dead. In fact, it is not even the past, right? By William Faulkner, I think, which is spoken in the movie. So,
but I think, like, that memories thing, what you realize is, like, for example, Kiddo and Kaira's relationship, which, is a beautiful relationship. There's no jealousy there from Kaira's end. She makes good memories for Kiddo.
Yeah.
So that tinkle thing that they have, that connection that they have, that she would read him tinkle and that was his favorite memory.
Yeah.
She created something nice for him.
Yeah.
Which she didn't have, because she knew that she didn't have that.
Yeah.
And the one memory that she has is the doll. That's all that she has. The doll that was actually more a representation of when she was sad.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how Kaira actually made it a happy memory for Kiddo, even though she was going through all this pain.
Yeah, in fact, in their context, there is a beautiful quote in the movie where she says to him, "Apna kuch dhoondne gayi thi, tumhara kuch mil gaya."
Yeah.
When she's referring to the past, when she's going in search for the doll, and like she finds the beautiful like comics that she used to read for Kiddo in that movie. It also reminded me of this beautiful scene in Namesake, where Irfan Khan takes his kid to the edge of this like bank of the river, and he says, remember that we came from so far and we came to this place where there was nowhere left to go. And the kid asks, how long do I have to remember it for? And he says, remember it always. So, it's just that idea of, sort of creating beautiful, healthy memories as a parent, and which is beautifully mentioned in the film.
Speaking of beautiful and healthy, I think this film has something unique to it, which I don't think is in a lot of films, especially around that time. It wasn't happening. Therapy is a big part of this film.
Yeah.
Right? And the idea of the past haunting Kaira and the past lingering over Kaira, right? And why that is necessary to address, and why is it important for her to go to therapy. And I think the film makes a strong case for it, right? Because she is not let go. The past might as well be right next to her. And informing every decision, every relationship, everything in her life.
Yeah. In fact, the entire point of the film, or like the most of the creative choices which are made in the film by the writer and director, feel like she's almost trying to, sort of sugarcoat this idea of therapy for this world, which sees therapy as a taboo topic almost. And like, so all the manner in which the issues are addressed, the manner in which they are resolved, or like the idea of Shah Rukh Khan also, which we will talk about, come from that space. Like, she's trying to sugarcoat the idea of therapy, right? But like the first time it is introduced in the film is where this friend of Kaira, who goes to a Dimag ka doctor, DD as they called it, and she asks him, why do you go to your therapist? Because you can say to the world that you are gay. And he says, no, because I can say it to myself that I am gay. And like, which becomes like then the idea of self-determination, of arriving at the truest idea of yourself. In the context of the film, it kind of moves forward.
One of my conflicts with this the idea of therapy in films, what I struggle with, as someone that has gone to therapy, what I sometimes I'm trying to figure out in these films, because Good Will Hunting is another example, right? Where he goes to therapy. The approach often is unlock your potential, right? This is my concern, because I get that as a point, but I am a little worried about the idea of therapy being like the startupification of therapy. You know, the dude bro being like, well, how do you become the most successful version of yourself? Here's 5 things you need to do in therapy. You know, I am wary of that. I'm not saying that this film does it, or even Good Will Hunting for that matter, but there is that concern.
Yeah, that's actually a very beautiful point, because like unlike the glamorous way in which, it's very easy when you turn up and your therapist is Shah Rukh Khan, right? Like the idea of that and the way this film introduces. But what we also like don't see in this film is like the first time like Kaira introduces, like gets to know about Jahangir Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, is when he's in a conference, and the question that he gets asked is, oh, what deems to be crazy and what not. And he's like, he's dressed shabbily to the event, like not shabbily, but in a very non-professional manner. And what it made me think was of how in this movie, Shah Rukh Khan was also going through his issues.
Yeah.
Right? At this particular point of time, like he was going through his own divorce. And that is why probably he was turning up to this event in this kind of fashion. And that is why he was able to break so many patterns with Kaira as well.
Yeah.
Right, like as they're going about the therapy, like it is not like an ideal relationship that you have with your therapist, or like the way the therapy goes about, because a lot of therapy is a lot of work. It's like unglamorous work which you have to do on yourself. And while we were working on the idea of this show, we were researching and we came across this beautiful quote that your trauma is not your responsibility, but your sort of healing is, which we came across, and we felt that was a beautiful quote. But also when we dug into it a little bit deeper, we realized, like, if you look at it from the perspective of someone going through trauma and dealing with it, that the addition of the line of that it is healing is your responsibility can almost create a burden on you, that you have to
healing fix it now.
So like that is I feel a flawed idea, or like a flawed expectation also to have. Like, you have to keep working on yourself, because as Shah Rukh Khan says in the movie, Everest to kabhi na kabhi to chadna hi padega.
Correct.
Like, you will have to at some point of time, if you want to live a fuller life, experience emotions fully, cry wholeheartedly, laugh wholeheartedly.
I think those are good goals though.
Yeah.
Right? Like the feeling that I should feel all these things, I should be able to process my emotions, I should have the tools to deal with stuff in my life. Right? Not that how does this help my career? I don't think it should be that sort of a link.
Yeah. And because the thing is, it is so interconnected.
Yeah, it is.
Like your career is connected with what you're going on. Like in Kaira's case, she realizes that like probably most of her choices which she's making are all coming from that place. In some ways, therapy or not, to see these issues in isolation is a flawed idea, I feel. Okay, because they are so interconnected. In Kaira's case, she kind of realizes that.
Yeah. Yeah, I also, when you were talking about the Shah Rukh Khan thing, about how he's shabbily dressed.
Yeah.
And how he's going through stuff clearly.
Yeah.
I think he sets an important example for why therapy is good.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you go to your parents or your friends, a lot of times when they're going through something, that leaks into your life.
Yeah.
Like what they're going through, they're like, you know what, you shouldn't date people like this. This is what I think, because of something that they're going through. Or the parents saying, you should get married with who we choose because of whatever they're going through.
Yeah. This idea of man handing misery to man, which is from the poem,
man handing, like you said.
Yeah, hurt people.
Shah Rukh is going through a tough time.
Yeah.
But he never lets Kaira know that.
Yes.
He never lets it affect his, like almost what he's saying to Kaira. Yeah. I don't think he's going, Kaira, actually, marriage is terrible. You should not get married because I'm going through a divorce.
Yes.
He's not saying that, no?
Exactly.
He's actually helping her find why she can't love.
Yes.
Right? I mean, the joke's there only. Shah Rukh Khan trying to help you find love writes itself. But that is such a beautiful thing that he is never letting that, his own struggles, which may be diametrically opposite to what she's going through right now.
Yeah.
But he's helping her in that pursuit.
Yes, absolutely. Like that is a beautiful point. Like the whole case for healing is because you can break the pattern of hurt. That this whole idea that hurt people, yes, it is true. We can take that as an extension where, we see it percolate across so many sections of the society where, sort of the hurt or the toxicity is kind of percolating from top of the food chain to like the lowest strungs. But in that, if wherever you are placed, if you become aware of this, if you become aware of the ways in which people are hurting, and that is also coming to you, you can take all of that and like kind of break the pattern.
Yeah.
And I feel that is the Everest which this movie is kind of telling
Correct.
us that
To
we have
break
to
those
kind of
patterns.
climb. Yeah, because we have to at some point of time break the cycle of hurt, right? And like that is only when we can live fully and have beautiful, meaningful connections, and it helps us become so happy and like
Yeah.
receive everything fully, right?
And also about breaking the pattern. Like at some point, Shah Rukh's character decides that that's it.
Yeah.
We're not going to meet anymore. Which was an interesting thing for me as well, because I didn't know whether therapy is something that continues forever.
Yeah.
You keep going to therapy, or
Yeah.
is there an end goal?
Yeah.
Like, what is the purpose of it? And obviously, I can't speak on that. I don't know whatever works for people, right?
Yeah.
But in this specific case, I think with Kaira,
Yeah.
he identifies that this is also becoming a need.
Yes.
This is an attachment,
Yes.
a habit,
Yes.
which is not good. I've given you the tools. Now you will be able to tackle it. Problems will come, but you should be able to tackle it.
Yes. And the most beautiful demonstration of Kaira healing, I believe, in the movie is when she finally goes to Shah Rukh Khan, professes her love for him or that she likes him, right? But he cannot do that. Like, he knows that that is not healthy for them or that is not the way forward for them. So he kinds of shuts it down there.
Yeah.
And she moves out. Like, again, if you've seen the story of Kaira, it is a moment where she has been abandoned. Like, her all abandonment issues, like in the case of Raghavendra, how when immediately what happened when he kind of got back together with his ex, her worst fears came to life.
Yeah.
In this context also, the moment Shah Rukh Khan says no, this person that she is kind of genuinely liking, her worst fears have come to life once again. But at this point of the film, because she has done her work, she has gone through the journey, she's not looking at that as abandonment, as a personal attack on her, but she's looking at it from the perspective of Jahangir Khan also, and the places that she's coming from.
Yeah.
That is why she can turn towards his house and like, blow a kiss almost, like, because she's accepting of all of it. And I feel that's beautiful of
she
this
by the way,
movie.
she cries, right?
Yeah.
So she's
Catharsis.
fully felt her emotion with something which she wasn't able to do before.
Yes.
Like she cries at the rejection, she's sad about it and all of that, but she's fine, because therapy is never going to be like, hey, now everything's going to be great and nothing's going to go wrong in your life. That's not what it is.
Yes.
It is that when it happens, you'll know how to deal with it.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
अगर खुल के रो नहीं सकोगे तो खुल के कभी हंस कैसे सकोगे?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's it, man. This is a beautiful note to end this episode on.
Absolutely.
We've had a lot of fun with this episode. So yeah.
Yeah, I had a great time with this episode, and obviously, if you had a great time as well, if you're listening right now, watching this, please like, share, and subscribe, because it really helps us if you do. And stay tuned for more content.